The Chicago Bears matchups with the Green Bay Packers just got a lot tougher with the Micah Parsons trade. But I'm not sure that Parsons solves all of Green Bay's problems the same way that Khalil Mack didn't solve all the Bears' problems in 2018.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1, and you can follow the podcast at Locked On Bears on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, where you can keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. On the show today, we look at the Chicago Bears' impact of Micah Parsons going to the Dallas Cowboys, the similarities and differences to the Bears' Khalil Mack trade back in 2018, how it affects these matchups right now, and also kind of how it affects the short and long-term future for these teams too. There's a ripple effect beyond just, the Packers roster got a lot better after that trade, but there's more to football than just how good you can make your pass rush right now. And there's a long-term aspect of this. And we'll address this idea of why didn't the Bears pull the trigger on a Micah Parsons deal like this? And the answer is, it's hard to pull off, and there's a lot of different moving parts involved in that process. But first and foremost, I don't want this to be confused as Bears cope, right? This is a big deal. Micah Parsons makes the Green Bay Packers significantly better, is a huge upgrade, and goes from that game feeling like a little bit of a toss-up against the Bears to that maybe the Bears have a chance to pull off one or two against Green Bay this season. That becomes a heck of a lot harder. Micah Parsons is one of the best defensive players in football. This is one of the biggest trades in Green Bay Packers history, maybe one of the bigger trades in NFL history, rivaling that of the Khalil Mack trade. I'm in no way trying to downplay or depreciate. This is a big deal and a really big upgrade for the Green Bay Packers. But I also think there tends to be an overreaction of now they're the Super Bowl favorite in the NFC, right? And it's I guess favorite, yeah, but I'm not ready to guarantee them they're going to be in the Super Bowl. Micah Parsons equals automatic Green Bay Packers Super Bowl. I think we should back up a little bit here. And we should recognize that, hey, this is very much a copycat type of move to when the Bears did a similar thing in 2018, giving up future draft picks to go get the best defensive player available on a trade market, a perennial all-pro sack monster in Khalil Mack. I'm not necessarily here to debate, is Parsons now better than Mack was then? I don't know that that's important to get into, but I think the compensation is an interesting comparison here, where Micah Parsons is traded for 2 first-round picks and nose tackle Kenny Clark, a really solid veteran player on that defensive line. And when the Bears traded for Khalil Mack, they just gave up draft picks, right? They gave up 2 firsts, a third, and a sixth, but they got a second and a fifth-round back in exchange. And so we can't really do perfect apples-to-apples comparisons there, because we don't know how many draft pick equivalents Kenny Clark is worth in this. But it does feel like the Bears gave up a little bit more. It's tough because Kenny Clark is a good player, but the Bears also got a second-round pick in exchange. But the Bears also, didn't have to pay. They paid Khalil Mack a big contract, but now Micah Parsons is an even bigger, massive record-setting contract, and that's going to be a long-term factor that we'll talk about in a little bit here. But it's generally on the same page as the Mack trade, just with a player in there as opposed to a bevy of draft picks. But it is still 2 first-round picks from Green Bay that's going to be a significant detriment to their future in exchange for building up the present a little bit more. So when we think about this Bears-Packers matchup this upcoming season, obviously it becomes a real challenge. How are you going to block Micah Parsons? That would be a challenge if he were a part of the Dallas Cowboys when the Bears play in, week 3 or week 4? I think it's week 3 against the Cowboys. That was going to be a challenge, and it becomes an even bigger challenge against Green Bay, knowing that they also have Rashawn Gary as the other edge rusher, and they still have Lucas Van Ness coming off of the bench there, plus the ability to blitz other players. But they do then lose a massive stabilizing force on the interior then in Kenny Clark. And I'm in no way trying to insinuate that there's like a net negative there by any means, but I do think it's a shifting of Green Bay Packers resources. I mean, I think they really like the other defensive tackles they have on their roster in terms of, Devontae Wyatt, and they drafted Carl Brooks in the 6th round a couple years ago. They got an undrafted free agent this year that they like. Like they've used some picks on some interior guys, but I have to think the run defense of Green Bay takes a little bit of a hit here by not having Kenny Clark on the inside. Like, yes, he hasn't been at a Pro Bowl level every single season, but he's just been a really, really solid player on the interior and one of those guys that does a lot of dirty work and doesn't always get enough credit for it, but has been like consistently a solid run defender who also has plenty of pass rush upside. I know he's coming off of a little bit of a down 2024 season, so there's some thought of like, does him entering age 30 still play at the same high level? But I think certainly there's an impact there for Green Bay that they are more than happy to make up for with Micah Parsons on the outside. But the Bears were always going to have question marks about their left tackle position going up against any top flight pass rusher this season. We're not even sure who the week 1 starting left tackle is going to be, although all signs point to Braxton Jones unless something crazy happens between now and then. And that's been the case for quite some time now. So, whether it was Braxton Jones going up against just Rashawn Gary or now, Parsons on one side and Gary on the other side, you were probably going to need to help out that side anyway. You were going to need to slide protection to that side. You're going to need to have tight ends chip and running backs help out in pass protection on that side of the offensive line. Have Tooney slide over and help and try and double team on that edge whenever possible. That doesn't change. It just means that now you have to allocate more of your blocking resources towards the Micah Parsons side. And it means that probably Darnell Wright gets thrown in a lot more, I would say, pressure on his shoulders to say, hey, like, you've got to be the stalwart right tackle here. You've got to be the guy who we can just kind of leave out there on an island and know that we can trust you. Because, we'll see Parsons rush off both sides. He actually does, I think, a little bit more against right tackles than left tackles over the course of the season. But if I'm Green Bay or any smart defensive coordinator, I'm taking my best pass rusher and putting him against the other team's worst offensive lineman. And so between the two tackles, they're going to be rushing him off the left side a bit more. But like now it's on Darnell Wright to say, all right, you're a big boy, year 3, right tackle. Like, he doesn't need to be a Pro Bowl player, but you got to be a guy that we can just sort of set it and forget it, ignore it. He's good. Just say, okay, we're going to worry about left tackle. We're going to worry about right guard sometimes maybe, but we got to trust that left guard should be good to go. Traded for Joe Tooney. He's got to be solid. Center, you paid big bucks in free agency. You should be able to say he doesn't need a lot of help. And Darnell Wright is a first-round pick, top 10 pick at offensive tackle. You should be able to say that side's taken care of. It doesn't mean that side is perfect. It doesn't mean there's never any pressure from that side, but it's like it should mean that side is consistent. You know what you're going to get, and you don't feel like you have to help him because more often than not, he'll be able to do a good enough job. So the pressure's on him and offensive line coach Dan Richard to really help us see Darnell Wright take that next step, because I feel like we haven't necessarily seen major strides from Wright. He hasn't been bad by any means, just hasn't taken that big step forward. But now is the time, and the pressure will instantly be on. Fortunately, they don't have to play Green Bay and Micah Parsons until late in the season. But again, you're getting them twice in a 3-week span on December 7th and then December 20th. So we'll have some time to see what this Bears offensive line is going to look like before they have to tackle the Micah Parsons problem. But it's absolutely going to be looming on the horizon. I think the consequences of this trade will be looming on the horizon for the Packers as well. And it could very well and should very well be worth it to them. I'm not trying to say it's not a good idea or a bad trade or whatever, but I want to apply some of the lessons we learned from the Khalil Mack trade in Chicago to how that might play out for things in Green Bay and what we can learn from that and what that means for what the Bears need to do from a team building standpoint moving forward. Next on Locked On Bears. The Locked On Bears podcast is brought to you by our friends at Upside. Are you still paying full price for gas? Stop leaving money behind. Get real cash back every time you fill up with the free app Upside. Simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. Using our limited time promo code TOUCHDOWN, you'll get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You could make up to $300 a year just from buying the gas that you already needed. At first, I thought it was too good to be true, but it's totally legit. Real people are getting paid just to make their daily commutes, and you can too. Plus, you can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Don't let this offer drive on by. Download the free Upside app now using our limited time promo code TOUCHDOWN for a limited time 25-cent per gallon bonus. That's promo code TOUCHDOWN. Offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. Locked On Bears podcast is also brought to you by Gametime, the best way to get tickets for all of your favorite live events. The NFL season is back. And there's nothing better than actually being in the stadium, surrounded by fans, cheering on your team. But we know that getting tickets can be a hassle between login screens and queues and wait times, prices jumping at the end of checkout. It's a frustrating process, but that's why Gametime is so great, because it's fast, easy. You're always getting 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price, with all fees included, so the price you see is the price you pay. I've used it not only for Bears games, but I'm actually going to a concert tonight as this podcast comes out at Soldier Field, My Chemical Romance. I got my tickets through the Gametime app. I can't recommend enough. I use it all the time in my personal life. So download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Gametime today. So Micah Parsons makes the Green Bay Packers a much better team now, and certainly will be an upgrade for the duration of this initial contract. He's a young ascending player. He's a good player. But as we learned with the Khalil Mack trade, when you give up significant draft capital to go get a player, plus, human capital in terms of Kenny Clark going, it makes your team really better in the moment, but then makes it harder for your team to remain stacked, because you lose future flexibility in terms of salary cap finances in the big contract you just gave out, and also you lose future opportunities to restock your roster with young, cheap talent in the NFL draft. Now, I think the Packers got a good deal by only having to give up 2 first-round picks. We thought there might have to be more draft compensation to get this deal done. And, of course, Kenny Clark sort of is the replacement for that. But I still think that this is something that the Packers won't feel right away, but will feel the residual effects of later on, the same way the Chicago Bears did. Because we talked about this on our podcast when it came to the potential for a Trey Hendrickson trade, or people talked about the TJ Watt loose possibility, although that was never really realistic. And then Micah Parsons was a name that was thrown out there a little bit as a potential Bears target, and that obviously didn't happen. But one of the issues that we ran into when we talk about this, and we'll talk about it a little bit in a little bit, but the Bears specific context, but now that Green Bay is giving Micah Parsons, whatever it is, $47 million a year, they can do some different things to structure the contract, but it's the most guaranteed money I think that any player has ever gotten, at least in terms of not as a percentage of the contract, but just in a lump sum being handed over there. That will significantly eat up and erase whatever salary cap space the Packers have right now, whatever salary cap space the Packers have next year, and probably a good chunk of whatever they have in 2027. Yes, they can backload the deal and keep pushing the money down the line, but you're going to have to pay that money to him. And the guaranteed money makes it so that you can only backload so much of it. Sure, it doesn't really affect this season because you're not going to sign anybody else right now. But next offseason, 2026, the Packers were already set to only have $15 million in cap space. Jordan Love's salary cap hit next year is $36 million. Rashawn Gary's is $28. Kenny Clark's was going to be $31. So I guess they're going to clear some salary cap space from the Kenny Clark trade. Should give them about $14 million in cap space. We'll see how the money goes out. So they get some savings there. But the Packers have a lot of money already invested in a bunch of players. And what we're going to see is this version of the Green Bay Packers right now is the 2025 Packers are going to be as good as we'll see the Packers be now from here on out. This should be the peak, because their lack of cap space will leave them much more difficulty in re-signing current players on the deal, and they'll have fewer draft picks to keep loading up the roster. So we talked about this a little bit with the Bears, but if we look ahead to the Packers free agency next year, and I promise we're not going to spend all the segment talking just about Green Bay Packers players, because of course, we don't like them, but they're not going to be able to re-sign key players to big contracts as they start to run out of money. Their linebacker Quay Walker is entering free agency. Wide receiver Christian Watson is entering free agency. Some of the offensive linemen are entering free agency. Some of the receivers, Romeo Dobbs, is entering unrestricted free agency. And so much of that salary cap space is going to be eaten up by this Micah Parsons deal that you're just going to have to let more of those players walk. And that's a problem for the future Green Bay Packers and not the current Green Bay Packers. But that's why this deal is all in about this year. And so from a Bears perspective, it's going to be tough this year. But then I want to see how they balance that out because, they'll be wanting to give extensions to Elton Jenkins on the offensive line. Well, they were not going to have money for that. Keshawn Nixon, Lucas Van Ness, Isaiah McDuffie, Devontae Wyatt, like Luke Musgrave, Tucker Kraft. These guys are coming towards the end of their rookie contracts. And you can keep trying to stuff money into the future, but there's going to be guys you just can't re-sign because you just don't have the money to do so. And when you hit like open free agency next offseason, they're not going to be able to sign big name outside free agents. Like this Packers roster is as good as it gets. They'll have second and third round picks to kind of fill in some cracks here and there, but this has to be the roster that gets the Packers to the Super Bowl. Just like we saw with the 2018 Bears with Khalil Mack. Like that was as good as it got. And it was a great 2018 season. And Mack got them into the playoffs. They won the NFC North. Matt Nagy was coach of the year. And the Bears looked like geniuses in year one for having traded for Khalil Mack. But they were unable to sustain that success, in part because maybe the coaching staff wasn't great, in part because maybe the quarterback wasn't great, but also in part because they lost a bunch of draft picks and didn't have much salary cap space. So they started bleeding talent a little bit. And certainly the Packers have a more stable quarterback situation, we think. I mean, they're giving Jordan Love a bunch of money, and we think he's probably pretty good. But we got to see him do it in the postseason. And we think Matt LaFleur seems like a pretty good coach, but is defensive coordinator Jeff Hafley the best defensive coordinator in football? Not necessarily, but Micah Parsons, I'm already mixing them up, can make them look a little bit better. But like this Green Bay team will be 100% reliant on, can the young players they have on the roster now take Micah Parsons to a Super Bowl? Or are they tapped out here? Like, is this tapping them out? And they certainly are confident in this being enough to put them over the top. That's their prerogative. I'm not here to say that they're wrong, and maybe very much is. And by all means, if Micah Parsons puts you over the top of the Super Bowl, that's well worth it. But say the Packers lose in the divisional round this year, and then they get to the wild card and lose next year, and maybe they miss the playoffs 3 years from now. Then is the Micah Parsons trade worth it? I mean, that's even worse. That's only slightly better than what the Bears did with Khalil Mack. And I think we look back and say, like, Mack trade was a good idea, but the rest of the team maybe wasn't where it needed to be to accompany the Khalil Mack trade. But I just think it's a little bit more complicated than just, wow, Packers are instantly better and now they're set for the next 4 or 5 years. Like they're set for the next couple of years, maybe. But there tends to be this brain drain of like, they've got a lot of money tied up into a lot of players already. So they're not going to have any real avenues to keep getting better. It's just a matter of how much worse do they get and how quickly do they get worse following this 2025 season where they absolutely should be significantly better because Micah Parsons is a part of that deal, just like we saw the Bears do with Khalil Mack. Like the Packers won't have first-round picks the next couple of seasons. They're going to have to hit on those. And if they miss on any of those second or third-round picks, then you're really going to have a empty cupboard of young talent for a year, and that's really hard to overcome. Just like we saw after the Bears traded for Khalil Mack, right? You go into that 2019 draft, and you only have a third, fourth, and fifth round picks. You get David Montgomery, Riley Ridley, Duke Shelley, Kareth White, and Steven Denmark. You got maybe one good player out of a draft class there, and it was a third-round running back. That wasn't enough to sustain success. And then even the next year, you're not getting any first-round talent. So you get Cole Kmet and Jalen Johnson, but nothing else out of that second draft class. It's just a lot harder to sustain success, which can be worth it if you have enough of that success in the first year. But that's what all the pressure is going to be on Green Bay is like, you got to win right now. And if they don't, they might be in some trouble. And so that's where I have a little bit less long-term worry about the Green Bay Packers, because the sustainability aspect of it is the sacrifice they're making for the short-term immediate boost to their roster. That's also why we didn't see Ryan Poles make this Micah Parsons trade. Separate from some of the other factors of whether or not the Cowboys would have even agreed to it with the Bears based on compensation. We'll talk about that in a second. But like, I just don't think Ryan Poles sees the Bears as a Micah Parsons away from the Super Bowl the way that Green Bay might feel it is Micah Parsons away from the Super Bowl. So we'll check in on why the Bears didn't make that deal. And I'm not here to say like why they're better off without Micah Parsons, because that's not exactly the take there, right? It's not that they're better off with Micah Parsons, but that maybe there's some merit to the idea of the Bears not going all in just yet and being a little bit too early to pull the trigger on a deal like this, the way Green Bay did. Next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by PrizePicks, the daily fantasy platform that lets you turn your football predictions into real rewards. The preseason is in the rearview mirror. College football is getting started, and NFL Week 1 is right around the corner. So whether you've got your eyes on big name quarterbacks or breakout running backs, PrizePicks makes it easy to get in the game. It's simple to play. With PrizePicks, you just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. And if you get your picks right, you could cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. So for example, for Week 1, Thursday Night Football against Philadelphia, Dak Prescott's passing yard stat is set at 0.5 passing yards. If he gets more than 0.5 passing yards, you can win on one of your picks. That's a PrizePicks max discount boost for the start of the season. So download the PrizePicks app today and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after you play $5 at PrizePicks. Run your game. Bears fans are always going to be disappointed when any team makes a big addition at a position of need that the Bears could have used, and especially when it's the Green Bay Packers, right? I mean, it could, Mike. There is not another team in the NFL that we less wanted to see Micah Parsons go to, right? Even Minnesota or Detroit. Like, I would rather have Micah Parsons gone to the Lions or the Vikings than the Green Bay Packers, and I don't think I'm going to get too much disagreement about that. And so I was like, well, why didn't Ryan Poles make this trade? 2 first-round picks and a player? Like, the Bears have 2 first-round picks and a player. They could have given up that for Micah Parsons, and that may be true, but we don't know exactly what that would look like for Chicago. If Dallas particularly likes Kenny Clark or particularly wanted a nose tackle or that kind of player, I mean, could the Bears have done 2 first-round picks and Grady Jarrett? I'm not so sure. I mean, maybe, or 2 first-round picks and Gervon Dexter. I mean, would you have done that deal? I mean, it could very well be worth it, but we don't know exactly what Dallas wanted or who Dallas was willing to negotiate with, and maybe more importantly, who Micah Parsons was willing to negotiate with, because the Packers agreed to terms on the deal a couple days ago, it sounds like, and then got to negotiate with Micah Parsons, and now it becomes official once the Parsons deal is done. But from Ryan Poles' perspective, I think it's less about could they have found a trade package that works, and more about building the long-term sustainability of this football roster. Because, like we just talked about with Green Bay, if the Bears had traded for Micah Parsons, you will no longer be able to re-sign Jalen Johnson at the end of this season. If you had traded for Micah Parsons, given this deal, you would have to release Tremaine Edmonds after the season for the salary cap space. You would have to release DeAndre Swift at the end of the season for salary cap space. You would have to trade away Cole Kmet for salary cap space. You may eventually have to trade away DJ Moore for salary cap space. Like, in order to make a deal like this work for the Chicago Bears, you eventually, sooner rather than later, have to start bleeding talent elsewhere from your roster. And it would make them a lot better for this year. But we all have to ask ourselves, like, would Micah Parsons make the Chicago Bears a Super Bowl team this year? Like, it's Caleb Williams' first season. It's with Ben Johnson. It's Ben Johnson's first season with this team. It's the defense's first season with Dennis Allen. Like, this is not going to be a well-oiled Chicago Bears machine that is firing on all cylinders and giving this season the best shot at making the Super Bowl. Like, they're going to be better. They're going to push for a playoff spot. They might even make the postseason. But you're not going to find any realistic Chicago Bears fans saying, yes, I think we're going to the Super Bowl this season, even with Micah Parsons. He gets them a lot closer, but it feels a little bit like where the Bears were in 2018, where it's like, yeah, you can get to the playoffs, but if your quarterback's not ready to take that step and the rest of your roster's not ready to take that step, like the Bears with Khalil Mack in 2018 just weren't good enough. Like, the defense was great, but the offense wasn't good enough, right? The offensive line was okay. The receivers were decent, but they were just not good enough. They weren't scoring enough points. They weren't consistent enough on that side of the ball, and they couldn't sustain that success into the postseason despite having an elite defense led by the elite defensive player they added. And so I can't help but wonder if it would be a similar feeling where it's just like year one, the Bears defense would be elite with Micah Parsons, and they maybe win 11, 12 games and maybe win the NFC North. And then when push comes to shove in the postseason, you need more than just Micah Parsons to put you over the top. I mean, the reason why Dallas hasn't gone over the top with Micah Parsons, and that's not to be a shot at Micah Parsons, it's just to say that in the NFL, you need a lot more than just some star pass rush or even just a really good defense. Like, you need to be a well-rounded team, and trading for Micah Parsons makes it a lot harder to become a more well-rounded team. If Parsons is what then rounds you out, like if you were in a position where, hey, offense is set, we got all our guys, and defense is mostly good, but we just need a pass rusher, then I think that's when a Micah Parsons trade makes sense. But I look at the Bears right now, and I say, like, this is still an ascending team. I don't want to say a young team per se, because they got some veterans on this roster, but like, you're likely going to have a new running back next season. You're going to have some turnover on this defense like next season. This team is not 100% like set in place and just a Micah Parsons away. Micah Parsons would be a big boost and a big need, but like, we still got to see exactly who your linebackers are going to be next year. Is it Edmonds again, or is he not living up to his contract? Are you going to have to change out linebackers? You're going to have to change out cornerbacks opposite Jalen Johnson. Are you going to have to change out safeties with Kevin Byard and Jaquan Brisker both entering free agency? Are you going to trade out left tackles? Is Adi Trapillo going to play left tackle? Is Darnell Wright going to play left tackle? What's going to happen at the left tackle position? Like, there's still enough unanswered questions about the Bears for the future that trading for Micah Parsons would not allow you to answer effectively. Because if you trade for Parsons, then you can't spend money on a corner, you can't spend money on a safety, you can't spend money on a running back, right? I think from Ryan Poles' perspective, he says there's just still a little bit too much work to do on this roster. That if this were 12 months from now, and you're going into 2026, year 2 of Ben Johnson with Caleb Williams in this offense, and you've got a little bit more of a long-term answers at running back and cornerback and safety and maybe linebacker, and you say, all right, we're just one pass rusher away, that's when you trade for Parsons. That's when you trade for Trey Hendrickson. That's when you trade for TJ Watt or whoever that player is, because it's like, now we don't need to make any other moves. This is the last move, and we can absorb not being very salary cap flexible in the future, because then we're all in on winning right now. And if that hurts us 3 or 4 years, not going to be that big of a deal. And so that's where I just feel like it was too early for the Bears to pull off a Micah Parsons trade from Ryan Poles' perspective. And I get it. I also get the arguments that, hey, it would make sense to trade. You don't have the opportunity to get good players like this, so get him and then figure out the rest later. That's a valid approach, but I'm not sure it's in the best interest of the Chicago Bears, because I just think you're still going to need more other upgrades to this roster besides just Micah Parsons to really get where you want them to go. One last little epilogue here. Got a feel for Matt Eberflus a little bit, huh? Come to Dallas, be the defensive coordinator. Hey, you want to work with Micah Parsons? Oh, too bad. Now he's taken over a defense that's obviously going to be totally demoralized and debilitated, and they have some really big pass rush questions. It just doesn't seem like it's going to be a very good defense, and it's going to hurt Matt Eberflus's career, maybe more so just because they have a bunch of bad talent. Like, at least in Chicago, he was able to make a decent defense because they had some good players, but like, in Dallas, the stars of that defense, that means Trayvon Diggs and Deron Bland in the secondary. They got good corners, but they don't got much for linebackers. They don't got much for defensive line. At least that's like consistent and productive. And so as much as like, we're not feeling too bad for Matt Eberflus around here, we can choose your own adventure. You can either feel bad for Matt Eberflus or you can laugh at Matt Eberflus. I'm not going to judge you either way, but man, that was one of the first names I thought of as like, oh man, he shows up in Dallas and immediately gets screwed. Like, that's tough. It doesn't feel like he or Schottenheimer are going to be very long for that job, right? Year or two max before Jerry Jones cans them, because Jerry Jones made the roster worse and then is going to blame the coaching staff for them not being as good. And that's something we can all take appreciation of, right? Like, as much as Bears fans get mad at George McCaskey and certainly got mad at Ted Phillips a lot and felt like maybe they were too involved in management decisions, at least they're not as meddling and horrific as Jerry Jones, right? Like, holy moly. At least we don't have Jerry Jones lording over everything the Chicago Bears are doing. Like, can we take that as a win heading into the weekend, even if the Packers definitely got the big win heading into the weekend. But hey, don't have to worry about the Packers for 3 more months. So we'll start turning our attention to the Minnesota Vikings next week as we start previewing next Monday's football matchup. We're going to take Labor Day off here on the podcast, so we'll be back on Tuesday. So make sure you hit the subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. That way you're not missing any episodes and keeping up with all of our daily in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And if you're looking for a second listen today, you can always check out Locked On NFL for more football talk, more Micah Parsons talk there for sure. Locked On Fantasy Football to get you ready for your fantasy football drafts. Or with the college football season, check out the Locked On podcast for your favorite college football team. We got shows for all the major programs around the country. Same place you find Locked On Bears, you'll find a Locked On podcast for your college team. So go check out that Locked On podcast. Coming back to Locked On Bears on Tuesday. Make us your first listen once again for another opportunity to bear down.